This is draft season. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Tony Pauline, as always, is with us, and now we're joined by the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl. He is Jim Nagy. Jim, how are you, man? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, John.
It's all brought to you by, of course, Tommy Hilfiger at PVH Brand, an official partner of the New York Giants. Go ahead, Tone.
Jim, pleasure to be with you. And I got to tell all my viewers, Jim Nagy will always be my hero. And why? Because back in January of 2021, when the world was locked down, and here in the Northeast, you basically needed a permission slip to walk off your property. Jim Nagy and his team at the Senior Bowl found a way to basically get the Senior Bowl run, and we got everything in, Jim, those 3 days when everything was locked down, and the NFL was in the process of canceling the combine. We had all 3 days of practice. We got to speak with the players, granted at a distance. The game went off. And really, I think Jim Nagy and his staff at the Senior Bowl showed the world, the way it could be done. And I remember you putting out a tweet. I think you said there was like 3,300 COVID tests, and there was just one positive.
Yeah, Tony, thanks for bringing up. It was no, actually really proud of the team that year. I think we had a really good plan. It was like 3,600 tests. One player popped positive on the second day he was down here, and that was it. No one from the NFL, no one from our support staff. And again, we had to kind of strip everything away that year and just do practices in the game. None of the other stuff we like to do during Senior Bowl week. But yeah, and that was that was a really good experience. I do remember though, like a week before the game, I looked at my wife one night at home. We were having dinner. I'm like, what did I do? Like, what are we doing? Like, this is starting to get, it starts to get real the closer you get. Like through the fall, I'm like, we're having this. We got a good plan. And then you get like a week out and you're like, oh my God, this could go so wrong. But thank God it didn't. And really for those players, really that whole year was about the players and the teams. Like I just couldn't imagine being in at the time, like Gettleman's shoes, like being a GM and having to go through a draft process where you didn't get any face-to-face interaction with players. Like I don't know how they would have done that. So yeah, I feel fortunate we pulled it off that year.
And when you talk about players, I look at this year's roster and I find it very gratifying. And I find it gratifying for two reasons. Number one, I see a lot of guys listed at positions other than what they played in college. I see a lot of 240-pound, 235-pound college defensive ends all of a sudden listed at linebacker. And the other thing that I absolutely love is there are a lot of guys who are going to be at the Senior Bowl who were productive players for 2 and 3 years at college, yet coming into the season, they were dismissed or ignored by scouts. They're not talked about in the draft Twitter world. And now they're going to be at the Senior Bowl, basically showing their wares at the biggest scouting event prior to the draft.
Yeah, Tony, the key is always getting the best players down here. So like what you're saying with that edge crew, some of the guys like the Will McDonald's, who's going to be 240-ish, Andre Carter, some of those guys fall in that category. We're just trying to bring the best players. You got to fit them somewhere. And from a body type perspective, they're really more outside linebackers than they are true edge players until they put on 15 or 20 pounds. So it's all about showcasing what they are as athletes. I mean, that's what they can do in a scheme that wasn't asked of them in college. I think that's a big thing for any all-star game, is letting guys show something maybe they weren't able to show in college. And then everyone wants to see movement. Evaluators want to see movement. So getting some of these guys that have only been going forward their whole career, and again, of course, we're going to put them in one-on-one pass rush, but to maybe see them go backwards and take some, see them drop, see them run seams with tight ends. I think it's beneficial for everybody.
Jim,
two things.
Go ahead, Tom.
I got to ask you, was it more difficult to construct a roster this year than in previous years when you look at the fact NIL, so many seniors going back for second senior seasons? I mean, the middle rounds of this year's draft were basically gutted. Situations where this year, especially in bowl games, there were so many players who were late round, even free agent types, sit the bowl game out because they want to prepare for the draft, where in the past, it was basically maybe first or second round prospects who would sit out the bowl game. Did you find yourself in a situation where maybe you had to fill a roster spot 2 or 3 times because guys kept pulling out, or guys that you wanted decided, no, I'm not going to play in the Senior Bowl this year, or going back to school maybe even?
Well, it's a great question, Tony. I'd say that the position that you felt it most was quarterback. When we started the year, I'm kind of cheating on you. I'm looking over at our board right now, and that quarterback stack was just it was so full. I mean, there was a million of them. And just in particular, our game, you got like Keaton Slovis. We offered an invite to. Not only did he go back to school, he transfers. From Pitt to BYU. I mean, that's kind of odd, right? And then you can just go up and down the list of these guys that are, the Devin Learys, the Brennan Armstrong, like guys that were projected, draftable quarterbacks going into the year for whatever. Sam Hartman, for whatever reason, like maybe didn't have the years they wanted to have, and now they're going back and they're transferring. I mean, it's going to be crazy next year trying to track all these guys. I can't wait to get through this extra COVID year stuff because that's what really complicates it. I think in the long run, the NIL is going to be good for all-star games because it will keep some of these guys in school longer. I think a lot of guys in the past, maybe prematurely jumped to the pros because they had a financial need, a family need that they needed to address, and felt like the NFL was the best path to do it. Now with NIL money, maybe they can, keep some things good on the home front while they finish out their career. So yeah, it was definitely a different year. One particular position, like you asked about, was defensive line. We lost 3 D linemen in one day. Fabian Lovett, the D tackle from Florida State, went back, and then 2 Clemson guys, Ruka Rororo and Tyler Davis, both decided to go back on the same day. So, I mean, you've been around all-star landscapes, man. You're sitting there, you feel like you got your position, that position group's in a good spot, and then immediately, boom, 3 interior guys go down, and you're left scrambling a little bit.
Hey, the good news is that they'll be back. I mean, they're going back to school. They'll be seniors next year. So I agree. Right. I think it's definitely going to help you long-term, Jim. I think it'll help you for sure. New way you guys are doing the coaches this year. We don't just have 2 staffs. You have a bunch of guys from different teams coming together. Explain to us how that's going to work, Jim. Practice structure. How has it been working? Assigning players to different coaches and the rosters. How has this whole new way of doing things really impacted your couple weeks heading into the game? And how is it going to look differently when we're out there watching practice?
Yeah, it's, when I got the call over the summer about the coaching change, I'm not going to lie, wasn't real happy at all. We've had the same coaching format for 73 years. It's worked really well, but the more we've gone through the fall, the more I've thought about it. I think both setups are good, but I like this year. So we're gonna have 16 teams represented behind the scenes at the Reese Senior Bowl. So, and all those teams are drafted in the top half of the draft. So our players are going to be exposed to that many more coaches and guys that are part of the decision-making crew. So from it created extra work from a operational standpoint, a logistics standpoint. You got 30 coaches coming in from 16 different clubs. Not many people know this, but the NFL trainers pulled out of all-star games last year, so they will no longer cover. We're really lucky that we've got the Andrews Institute with Dr. James Andrews kind of right in our backyard here in Pensacola. So they came on. We have a partnership deal with the Andrews Institute to do the training. Like our video stuff, like it's usually turnkey when you have the 2 coaches. They bring the entire operation. They load up, they get on a charter, they come. But this year, even with the video, we've got video guys from the Bucks and the Jags and the Titans all coming in separately. So there's just a lot of balls in the air right now. So to pull it all together really quick, we've done multiple Zoom calls with both coaching staffs, kind of setting the expectation for the week, and now kind of letting those head coaches, Luke Getsy from the Bears, their offensive coordinator, and Patrick Graham from the Raiders, their defensive coordinator, guys that are kind of, I think Pat's already had some head coaching interviews. I think Luke's on the cusp of doing that. But now it's them. I told those guys, like, this is your show now. We're going to be here to support you and do everything we can as a Senior Bowl staff to set you up for success during the week. But I do not want to micromanage those head coaches. I want the practice script, everything, the way they want to lay out the week to be from them. I mean, because this is, frankly, a great audition for the head coaches. It's a great audition for these younger coaches that are getting put up a level. They're coaching up, if you will. So it's a big week for all those guys. I'm actually, anytime you go through something the first time, it can be, there's a little anxiety wrapped into that. But I'm actually really excited to bring this group together. We're going to have a big dinner on Saturday night, the night before player arrival, and going to be about 40 of us. Should be a really fun time.
Tony, why don't you lead us off with a quarterback from maybe, I think, a school that everyone knows and loves, and it's just a powerhouse in the country.
Yeah, that would be Shepherd, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That can be found someplace in the state of West Virginia. Yeah, I mean Tyson Badgett. I mean, fun, good story. I guess father is a world champion arm wrestler. I mean, the only people who remember arm wrestling are those of us who remember Wide World of Sports when it was on Wide World of Sports. But you know, you get a guy like Badgett, who I believe this is his second senior season, could have entered the draft last year, decides to go back for another year. Big, strong arm guy. Accuracy or pass placement is a bit of a concern for me. What do you think Badgett has to do Senior Bowl week to really elevate his draft stock?
Yeah, Tony, that's a good question. I would say accuracy is one, but one thing I do like, Tony, that he can layer the football down the field. I mean, he does a really nice job of that. It kind of reminds me of Romo when I did Romo coming out of Eastern Illinois, because he can run around and make things happen. All-time record holder for touchdown passes at all levels of college football. Like you said, he went back this year and he actually jumped in the portal and had offers from West Virginia and Maryland, so he could have jumped up. I think we do the in-person invites now with some of the small school guys, and so I took the trip to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and he told me, he's like, Jim, if I would have gotten an offer from one of the blue blood programs, a USC, a Notre Dame, I think those are two of the schools he mentioned, he might have left, but when he didn't get those, he decided to run it back with his teammates and try to win a national title. And unfortunately, they fell a game short. They lost in the semis. But, you know, Tyson's 6'3", 6'0", he's 220 pounds. And I saw him at the Manning camp. I spent a few days at the Manning camp with him, and he definitely throws it good enough. There's no question about arm strength. So it'll be a big week. You know, there hasn't been a D2 quarterback drafted since '99, I believe, is the year. Chris Grayson, I think, was the last D2 guy taken. But we don't invite anyone to the Senior Bowl we don't think is going to get drafted. It doesn't always work out that way. But I wouldn't have invited him if we didn't see a draftable player, and if really the overwhelming support of the league was that he wasn't going to be drafted. And we do these posts over the summer on our social media, the Small School Saturday posts, kind of trying to profile some of the FCS guys and lower. And the 1 week in June when I put Tyson on there, within an hour I had 4 or 5 buddies from the NFL text me like, "Hey man, that's my guy. Keep him quiet." And, some guys thought he could be like this year's Bailey Zappi, was what a couple other guys thought. So more than one guy shot me back that this guy could be this year's Zappi. So excited to get Tyson down here. And you guys brought up his dad. Met his dad a couple times, and you will probably meet him if you're down here in Mobile. Like he's the type of guy, like he's going to meet everybody. He's got a huge personality. Great dude. I can't wait to get him down here. So I will not arm wrestle him, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good to have him in Mobile.
One thing
I want to jump to one.
If you can just explain, when you say he layers the football, just for the people watching, just explain what that means exactly.
Yeah, he has a really nice feel for trajectory to different levels, because you can't throw. You got to throw at different trajectory points to different levels of the field, and he's got a really nice feel for throwing over coverage, I guess is the best way of saying that. And that's sometimes that's hard to learn,
Yeah.
So that's to me that's a little bit of an innate quality at the position. He does a nice job of that.
All right, I want to jump over to Clayton Tune out of Houston, Jim. Boy, talk about a gunslinger. This guy just throws the ball down the field. You want some vertical throws? Go watch Clayton Tune tape, because it's going down the field. He's going to be fun, and I think maybe just consistent accuracy is what teams going to be looking for him. What are the things you're excited to see about Tune when you get him into these one-on-ones on the practice field and into game situations?
Yeah, big, good-looking kid. He was the first guy that came up to me at the Manning camp the day I got there, and came right up. Like usually I go up to the players, but he came up, introduced himself, had a lot of presence to him. So just that one exposure alone, I think he's going to do really well in the interviews. But good-looking guy, can throw it. Like you said, I think, a little streakiness. I think there's some streakiness to his game. But he's going to be down here with Tank Dell, really good receiver, really explosive, dynamic slot receiver, returner. So at least in one-on-ones, he'll have chemistry with one guy in 7-on-7s. But, what I do like about Clayton a lot, and I've said this repeatedly, like he's got that clutch ability. When plays need to be made, he can make them. When he needs to make a drive, he can make a drive. There were a number of games like that this year where he can bring a team back. Our scout Walter Juliff, who did Texas for us this year, long time, 40-year NFL scout. Nobody knows that part of the country better than Walter. And I think the first game he was at this year was the UTSA game, and Clayton let him down and led him to the win. And Yeah, it's gonna be a fun week. I don't know how much Houston football some people in different parts of the country see, but this guy's got a lot of tools. There's no doubt.
We'll move to a different position now. Josh Wiley was a guy, some people thought he was going to enter the 2022 draft when he had that great year for Cincinnati, had a foot injury. Am I incorrect, or did I see that he's also listed as a fullback?
Yeah, we didn't bring a true fullback this year, Tony. We had Hunter Lipke from North Dakota State on the roster. He was really the only one we thought was draftable in this year's class, at least slam dunk draftable. I mean, there's some other guys in the fringes that could, but we thought Hunter was a lock. We had Hunter in the 4th round. And then he had an injury literally like the week after we went up to Fargo and gave him that invite, which is really unfortunate. But no, so we're going to address that position with tight ends, which we've done in the past. There's been a number of those guys. Josiah DeGuara from Cincinnati went in the 3rd to Green Bay. He was a tight end. Trayvon Wesco from West Virginia went to the Jets in the 4th round. He was a tight end. So there's been a number of those guys. So yeah, Wiley will play it. And you said he talked about coming out last year, and it was the foot. He got hurt in the bowl game. Or he probably would have come out. And probably the best thing that he ended up coming back, because he was slim, he was thin last year. Guy was in the low 230s, and his agent just sent me a picture of him on the scale the other day. He's 248, 249 right there right now. So his body looks completely different. Best NIL story I heard all year. The agents hooked him up with a food delivery NIL deal this year. So this guy, Josh, just had food coming at the doorstep every day. And it helped him gain weight. So he's going to be a guy that, he's going to have a good week here. I know that, but he's going to have a good combine. He's going to jump in the upper 30s. He's going to be one of the best testers in this tight end class. So excited to get him down here and see what he can do.
All right, I want to swap over to running backs here, Jim. Boy, Tajay Spears, you watch him; he's electric. Like he can, move on to, change directions on the dime, acceleration, all that stuff. Just 5'11", 195. I'm not sure in the NFL now with so many split backfields that is that big of a deal. What are you hearing from scouts about Spears and exactly how they think he's going to get used in the NFL and what they want to see from him at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, really exciting player. Really fun guy to watch. I think Tulane's right down the road from us, a couple hours in New Orleans, easy drive. We at least had 4 or 5 different staff members go over and check Tajay out this year. And the staff there put him on our radar early. He is a junior. He's a guy that had to graduate to play in an all-star game, and he took care of business and favorite guy in the program. They love him. Absolutely love this guy. That's why, they gave him the invite in the locker room after the last regular season game, because his parents were at the game and they wanted to make that a special moment, include his parents in that. But yeah, great open. What I love about him, like you said, that he can stop on a dime, can really make you miss, and he's got a really good feel in the open field. Like some of the open field runs this year are some of the coolest runs of the season. I do think he's an NFL starter. Is he the 220 plus pound guy that everyone is looking for? No, but neither is Tony Pollard, who we had in the game a few years ago as well. Just if you are going to give up some, I'm going to say this, he's not Jamal Charles, because Jamal, I was in KC with Jamal, and I just thought about that because of the open field stuff. Now, Jamal had world-class speed, one of the fastest players I've ever been around. He doesn't have that, but when he gets in the open field, just feeling pursuit, feeling leverage, he's great at that. So I think he's a 3-down back. Like I said, I think he's going to be a starter. Yeah, if he's your starter, you probably want to compliment a bigger back compliment to him. I don't know how many people out there watch Tulane football. The AAC conference just, it's group of 5, and a lot of college football fans focus on the Power 5. So this could be kind of I think the Cotton Bowl was the coming out party with his 5 touchdowns. And hopefully the Senior Bowl week will be a continuation of that.
Talk about bigger backs who are electric. Kenny McIntosh of Georgia, who had some magnificent runs the past 2 years. I think if there's a red flag is he's very streaky. I mean, at times, like to say, at times he looks like a world beater. Other times, he disappears. And I'm sure he's going to be asked about that. What do you think McIntosh has to show at the Senior Bowl, really, to keep that basically high draft grade that scouts thought he was capable of?
Yeah, he's our highest graded back, and he was going all the way back to last spring. And Tony, I'm just glad we finally broke through in that Georgia running back room. That's been a tough nut to crack. I I was still with the Seahawks, but like when Sony and Nick came out of there, Senior Bowl didn't get either of them. Last year, we could have, Zamir White was a junior grad. We didn't get Zamir White. We had James Cook up until about the week before the game, and his agent pulled him out. So to finally get a Georgia back, it's exciting. We finally cracked that nut. But he's an explosive back. He's a 3-down back. I think we saw in that Ohio State college, the semifinal game, when they just threw that bubble out to him, and man, his first step explosion for a big back is pretty cool. They throw it to him a lot. Again, he's another guy I think projects as an NFL starter. Yeah. And I think with the streakiness you're talking about, they just use him in heavy rotation there. It's like some guy gets hot and they kind of feed him, and it depends on who gets hot early in that offense. And I think that's a big reason why Kenny wanted to come here, is to get a high volume of work during the week and let the team see him, just more reps. Even though he's a 4-year player at Georgia, I feel like Kenny felt like there was more to prove.
You want to jump to the wide receivers here, Tone?
Sure. Small school guy, Andre Yashovis from Princeton, guy close to my heart because he's a great athlete. He's a decathlete. I was actually a decathlete trained for the Olympics for 10 years, so I know I'm going to have a lot to talk to him about the track and field world. But a guy who you can see the athleticism on the field. He's a little bit raw. I got to imagine that, 3 days of practice, scouts are going to be really inspecting his route running, his ability to separate through the routes, his balance, as well as his hands. He's got the athleticism. Yeah,
Tony, that's a really good point. Yeah, NCAA heptathlon champion. So the guys, he's kind of a do-it-all athlete. And when you talk about athletes, like he's the kind of guy that I think will look different in Thursday's practice than Tuesday's, because really high-end athletes can apply coaching points quicker than, average athletes. When you get a guy with his athleticism, you get a couple coaching points in there that maybe he didn't get in college. You can see adjustments made quicker. So I think Thursday in the game could look better even than Tuesday and Wednesday. But he comes into the game, most of the league has him in the 4th and 5th round, which is exactly where they had Christian Watson last year. I didn't talk to a single team last year going into Senior Bowl week that had a day 2 grade on Christian. And, we see what happened. He had a great week here. He runs his butt off at the combine, and he goes 34th overall. So I don't want to peg that on Andre. That's a massive jump, a 3-4 round jump. But I do think he can help himself significantly down here.
Let's go over to Reese Rice at SMU. So productive, 96 catches, 1,300 yards, bigger guy, 6'3". And I'm looking forward to the one-on-ones, Jim, to see how well he can separate against maybe some of these quicker and faster corners.
Yeah, that's been you talk about a room that has been good to us, unlike the Georgia running back room. The skill group at SMU over the years with Danny Gray and Grant Calcaterra and there's been a bunch of them. I think we've had 2 or 3 tight ends and 2 or 3 wideouts, James Prochet, just in my time here at the Senior Bowl. But yeah, Rasheed is, and that's going to be the question, is like true top of route separation ability. But big, strong guy, good after the catch, really good at the catch point. He's one of those guys that you can put the ball up to and he can go up and get it. I think we saw that in the Maryland game. We had a scout at that Maryland game, and he kept blowing me up. It seemed like after every one of Rasheed's catches, he was texting me. I'm like, another one? Like, let's see the tape on Monday, man. I get it. He can catch. But no, he's fun to watch, some of that stuff. But you're right. I think the focus is going to be what that short area separation ability is going to look like.
Tony, you want to hit Charlie Jones?
Yeah, well, Charlie Jones, a guy who bounced around, finally found a home at Purdue, had a great connection with Aiden O'Connell. Not a guy who, say, jumps off the film from you as far as a great athlete the way Yashovis at Princeton does, but, just an outstanding pass catcher. It's great to see that he'll be competing at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, it's a great example of a guy, and there's a few guys in the game that have this. Deion Henley from Washington State, guys that really use the portal well. He made a good decision. Obviously, it was probably a no-brainer for Charlie, I'm guessing, since he was buddies from Little League time with Aiden O'Connell. But just talking to the Iowa staff before the season started, I'm like, talk to me about Charlie. I saw that he just, left and went to Purdue, and they said he's probably, along with Riley Moss, were the 2 fastest kids in the Iowa program. So they think Charlie could run high 4.3s. If you look at Riley Moss's 110-meter high hurdle time at 13.85, was 10th best in the entire country his senior year. That's blazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but the people that think that Riley Moss is a safety because he's white, I mean, that's a pretty lazy thing. Riley's gonna smoke, and so is Charlie. Those guys can both really run and super productive. I mean, he caught the ball really consistently, had a nice chemistry with Aiden, and he's a guy I think is gonna have a really good process.
I'll jump to tight ends right here quick, Jim. I want to ask about Luke Musgrave. You know, he didn't have a lot of production this year, just played in 2 games because of an injury, knee injury earlier in the year. But you watch him on tape, he can move, man. Like, he looks like a very good athlete. And I think in these one-on-one drills this week, he could really show up and do a lot of damage.
Yeah, if we wanted to do like betting favorites of who's going to make the biggest jump or be a buzz guy coming out of Senior Bowl week, Luke Musgrave might be the odds-on favorite in my opinion. Only played a couple games this year because of injury. It's been rehabbing hard to get back and get down here to Mobile. So we're excited to get him. But you're right, 6'6", 260. There's people up there at Oregon State that think he could touch in the high 4.4s, which if he does that, I mean,
wow.
that's pretty wild stuff. So I know that everyone's got Michael Mayer from Notre Dame pegged as the #1 tight end in the draft, and he's a really good player, taking nothing away from him. I actually haven't studied him a whole ton because he wasn't eligible for Senior Bowl, and I don't have a lot of time to watch guys that can't play in the game. But talking to guys around the league, I think that's more of a that thing's up in the air more than you're seeing in the media right now. I think that Dalton Kincaid's in that mix too, and unfortunately Dalton got hurt and he won't be able to. He got hurt in the last game, and he might be out the whole process. So we don't know there, but I think Dalton Kincaid and Musgrave both are going to give Michael Mayer from Notre Dame a run for his money by the time we get to April.
Talk about big athletes who can run and a position switch. Elijah Higgins, who was basically a receiver at Stanford, is I'm assuming, or I've seen, is listed as a tight end for the Senior Bowl. Guy like that who makes the transition from wide receiver to tight end. Is he asked to do a lot of inline blocking? Is he going to be a move tight end, or what are you looking for, or what do they do as far as putting him in a position to block?
Yeah, he's going to be a wideout, Tony. And again, I know it on the roster reveal show on NFL Network, they put him on with the tight end graphic, and that was a typo. They shouldn't have. We had some mix up there. Yeah, we had a mix up there, but no, he'll be with the wideout group, and there's only 3 tight ends on that group, so he might get a little work in there because we want to show the teams what they want to see. And there are some teams going through, you know, when we do our grade sharing calls with the teams and before we send invites out, I mean, there were some teams that think he's got some H ability, because what he is a big mismatch. You're 235 pounds, and there's some GPS stuff coming out of UCLA, or, you know, in the UCLA game last year where, you know, he's hitting 22 plus at 235 pounds. So this guy can really, really run. And so, yeah, will you play him in the slot? Call him whatever you want to call him. You're going to move him around and try to get him on linebackers. And but he's going to be down here he's going to be in the wide receiver room. But yeah, he might, you know, depending on what the coaching staff wants to do on the national side, Ronald Curry, the offensive coordinator, if I were him, I'd move him around a little bit, but you won't be seeing him in any like inline blocking drills. Unless the coaching staff surprises me. I don't think he'll be doing any of that.
Well, I mean, a guy 235 pounds, like you say, you want to get him on linebackers, but if he's playing safety, he's probably going to have a difficult time separating. So, I mean, tight end may be in his future because he's probably going to get larger before he gets smaller at that age.
Yeah, well, he would have the speed factor over most safeties. There's not too many safeties that are hitting 22 on a GPS. So if he's running verticals on safeties, he's going to blow by him.
All right, let's hit a couple old lines. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, go to the offensive line, guys. Just wondering about their positions. Nick Broker, who was a real good left tackle for Mississippi, was kicked inside the guard this year. And then you got Jalen Duncan from Maryland, who was a terrific left tackle for 3 years now, 4 years now with the Terrapins at left tackle. I mean, maybe he kicks inside as a zone blocking guard. What is your breakdown for those two guys, and what do you think we're going to see him Senior Bowl week?
Yeah, Nick Broker's going to be more inside. You're right. He was a left tackle, and I'll give it to the Ole Miss staff. I saw Nick at SEC Media Days this year, and I said to him, like, now you're going to be ready to move inside and play some guard during Senior Bowl week, right? And he was like, Jim, they already moved me. So he, you know, his arms got measured a little shorter than I think they're, 32 and a half or just under 33 inches. And in credit to Lane Kiffin, they made that move really to help Nick get a jump on his pro projection. So that was cool of the Ole Miss staff to do that. So we've seen a whole year inside at guard. That's where he'll be mostly. He'll probably do a little bit of center too. I think that's going to be Nick's calling card at the next level, as being a really versatile guy. And then with Jalen Duncan, we've got some really good tackles in this game, but I think Jalen, in terms of fitting the prototype left tackle athlete mold, I think it's Jalen. Darnell Wright, DeJuan Jones from Tennessee and Ohio State. Those guys are more right tackles and immediate day one starting right tackles. But Jalen, you watch his game, he's a very good athlete or higher on any grading scale. He's going to be a 7-level athlete or higher. Really nice feet, can just stay in front of people. It's easy for him. Again, we talked about a couple other guys with consistency. I think that's the thing with Jalen, just bringing it every game, the physicality, the finish every game. He's got something to prove that way. I hope he comes down here with a little chip on his shoulder, because I think he's heard that. I think he's heard that from scouts that have been through the building. But he's got a ton of things athletically you just can't coach.
How about Osiris Torrance? He's another guy, Jim, that I thought used the transfer portal really well. Was good at Louisiana Lafayette, goes to a big program, and then, boy, he showed off that power and the ability to move defenders all year.
Yeah, that was Billy Napier's best recruiting job last year, was getting Cybo to leave Lafayette with him. But they did a great job in that room when Billy was at Lafayette. I mean, you look at the guy, Robert Hunt, we had committed to the game before he had to pull with an injury. And then last year we had Max Mitchell. Now Cybo's coming to town. And, I don't think he fits all 32 teams. And when you get into like backup level players, that can force a guy to slide. But there's going to be, he's going to be more of a gap scheme player. But the teams that play with those guys, and again, I kind of default to my Seahawks background. They drafted a guy, Damian Lewis, from our game from LSU a couple of years ago, and Damian's been a starter from day one, really good player for them. This guy's going to fit. The Baltimore Ravens is another team that kind of comes to mind. But this guy, he can come off the ball and move you, and in pass protection, he's not going to get pushed. He's going to set a deep pocket. He can play square. He's not going to get his edges worked, and he's going to do things in the run game to cave people. So, in terms of the interior group, he's going to be, I'm sure for most teams, Cybo's right up there at the, top of that guard column. And again, he might only be a guard only. I don't know if Cybo can play center or tackle. But if you're just going to be a one position guy, you better be a starter, and you better be a good one. And thank God that's what Cybo projects as, is a really good starting guard.
I mentioned in the beginning, there are a couple of players in the game that have basically gone by the wayside or ignored. And now they're in the Senior Bowl. And one of my favorites is Asim Richards from North Carolina, who's been a starting left tackle there for 3 years. And he's protected the blind side for some really good quarterbacks or guys that are going to be projected to go early in the draft in future years. I think he's done a terrific job. What's your projection on him? Is he going to play left tackle? Is he going to move inside to guard? Regardless, I think he's going to be he's a terrific prospect at either position.
Yeah, you're right, Tony. He's played left. I think you'll see him play both tackle spots and probably some guard. I think the more you can do down here, I mean, we saw it a couple of years ago with, with the Bucks. I'm blanking now. Starting center for Tampa.
Gedeke?
No, not Luke. From Notre Dame, the right tackle, who came down here a couple of years ago and had never played center before and was a right tackle. Now I'm totally blanking the more I'm getting into this question. But he played center during the week. He'd never done it in a competitive environment and came down here, looked better at center than he'd ever looked at guard or tackle at Notre Dame, and got drafted in the 3rd round. Came down here like a 6th-round pick. So Asim's going to do the same thing. We're going to move him around and see where he fits best. But the thing you like the athlete and you like the length. He's got 34-inch arms and he can move. And really, when he gets out in space, some of his best stuff is second-level stuff, perimeter stuff. He can get out there and he can keep his body on people. So, again, that was kind of a late ad for us because, just talking to the North Carolina staff, that's a guy they were trying to get back. And that we were talking about the roster build part earlier, John, and you were asking how NIL affected it and everything. Like, we had to be really mindful of our relationships at the college level with these coaches. Like, we weren't going to send invites out if we got word that a team was trying to keep a player. Like Max Duggan, we talking to the guys at TCU all fall, and they really wanted to keep Max. So we kind of played that along with them, but didn't send an invite until the appropriate time. And the same thing that happened with North Carolina. We got some, real close ties on that staff, and they were trying to get him back. And when it got to the point where they didn't think they would, then it was okay. Go ahead and send him the invite now. So, yeah, that's how we'll use him. We'll move Richards around a bunch.
All right, I'll jump to the defensive line. You mentioned Notre Dame, Isaiah Foskey, a guy with a lot of production. And he's like your old school defensive end, right? He's not like this twitched up 242-pound guy that's going to bend and, be a crazy athlete. But he's long, he's strong, and I think he's going to be a really solid NFL player for a long time.
Yeah, the Bucs offensive lineman was Robert Hainsey. It just popped into my head when you said Notre Dame. So sorry, Robert, if you by any chance you're watching a Giants podcast, but no. So Foskey was a big get for us because he is a junior. We really like to get those underclassmen in the game. It's been a huge thing for our rosters over the years. I think 2 years ago we had 16. Last year we had 12. But double-digit sack guy each of the last 2 years at Notre Dame. And like you said, I mean, in terms of like the overall athlete, are there guys in this group that maybe could move better? Like if you watch him drop, like a DJ Johnson from Oregon, I think if you drop the two guys, I think DJ might look a little better doing that. But talking to the guys in training, he's out there training with Will Anderson from Alabama and some other really good players. And just, talking to the trainers out there, they think Foskey has a chance to dip into the high 4.4s. So wow. They think he's going to be a 4.5 guy all day long, which with that size, with that sack production, running a 4.5, all you got to do is go back and historically look at what those guys tend to do with those measurables and that production. He's certainly, those guys don't fall out of the top 50 picks very often. So excited to get him down here. I think one-on-ones are big. I think he's really looking forward to one-on-ones. And showing some stuff that maybe we haven't seen. But to me, he's a guy when you put him on, he knows how to rush the passer. Like he just knows. He has a plan. He has a nice feel for counters. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to see Isaiah play live, so this will be my first live exposure to him. My son's been playing high school football the last 2 years down here, so I've been landlocked in SEC country for 2 falls, just watching SEC games on Saturdays because I'm at a high school football stadium on Friday night. So. Excited to see Isaiah.
2 lesser names, or lesser known names, not lesser names. I apologize. Lesser known names on the defensive line. Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. Here's the guy who went back for a second senior season. If you watch Bowling Green, this guy's explosive. He's athletic. He gets behind the line of scrimmage, good change of direction, gets down the line of scrimmage in pursuit. Talk a little bit about him. Is he a defensive tackle? Is he a 3-tech? Is he a 2-gap end? He's a football player, and he's been a real good football player who people don't pay attention to, and they really should.
Yeah, his head coach, Scott Leffler, and I are buddies from college, and so Scott's been talking about this guy for a couple of years with me. Yeah. And he's a little bit like Keon White, who we have in our game from Georgia Tech, in the sense that they both play on the edge a bunch. They both reduce inside some, and they move like smaller men. I know that. I think Brooks, last time I hit up Scott, Brooks, this was like a month ago, Brooks was like 292. Last time I checked in with Georgia Tech, Keon was 293. And when you see them coming off the edge and doing some of the things, like you said, playing down the line of scrimmage, chasing, they look like 265, 270-pound guys. I couldn't believe when I heard that Brooks was over 290. He does not look that thick and girthy on tape, at least. But you're right. He gets in the backfield. And he makes plays in the backfield. He's not just a disruptor. He's a finisher when he gets back there.
Another guy who's not going to be criticized for being a little bit too small is Jared Clark of Coastal Carolina, a big man who is nimble for a 335-pound guy. He's quick and he's explosive. With a guy like Jared Clark, who's your zero technique nose tackle. Do coaches put him? Do they employ a 3-4 type line to see what Jared Clark can do, or if it's a 4-man line, Jared Clark has just got to roll with it? No,
we're an even front game. We always have been. It's really hard. I talked with the 2 coaching staffs, the 2 head coaches that came in for this year's game. It's really hard to deploy an odd front in a practice week and teach these guys because they're going to be seeing one thing in the game. They're going to be going against the 3-4 look in the game and in practice, and then see an even look in the game. And it's really hard, especially on the offensive line. teach that in 1 week. So we stay consistent on both teams. And with Jared, yeah, I think you can play zero nose. I think you can play one. I think it could be a big 5 technique. When I was in Seattle, we had a guy, Red Bryant, who was similar size to Jared, was just a really good big 5 tech. So thing I like about him, he's a tight end, and he just kept growing and getting bigger. I think you see some of that. I think Jared, if he fits up a little bit, I think he's going to change his body a little bit. But there's an athlete in there, because even in his stance, you can see it in his stance. The kid has flexibility.
Yeah.
And if he's one of those guys, to me, Tony, that if you grade the flash plays, you get really excited about it.
Yeah.
He can push the pocket. He does have upfield explosion. He's not just a 2-down plugger. So there's upside to the player. And I think that this is a big week for Jared Clark. He's got a chance to really ascend against better people, because, again, in the Sun Belt, he's just not seeing the guys he's going to see down here this week.
Move to linebacker. Last year, DeMarco Jackson of Appalachian State had a real good week and helped himself. You got another linebacker from Appalachian State in Nick Hampton, who is very well thought of. And I think he's more of a 3-down guy, or at least going into, we didn't think, say, DeMarco Jackson was a 3-down guy based off the college film. And then, boom, he exploded did as much during last year's Senior Bowl. You look at the way Appalachian State uses Hampton, primarily more up at the line of scrimmage, and maybe he's 230 pounds. So I got to assume that a lot of Nick Hampton, his results are going to be based on what he shows moving in reverse. Never mind, just because we know he can move up the field so well.
Yeah, Nick's been our highest graded Group of 5 defender going back to last spring. Long, explosive, high upside guy. I don't think, even talking to teams through the fall, they're like, Jim, he's, most teams are probably going to have 3rd-round grades on him coming off the tape, and then he'll leave Mobile and everyone will move him up to the 2nd, because he's got legitimate rush talent. We saw that against good people early in the year, A&M and in North Carolina. He can get after it. He's a good athlete. Yeah, you don't see him drop a lot, so he'll be doing some of that. But again, my philosophy with those guys, if they're that good going forward and they can impact the quarterback, why are we dropping them all that much? So that was like when I was in Seattle, whenever we drop Bruce Irvin, like, why are we dropping Bruce Irvin? Like, his thing is going to get the quarterback. So no, Nick's again, another guy I think is going to stand out in one-on-ones, because he's a natural pass rusher.
Jim, and I think that goes to the next 2 guys. And you mentioned this in one of your first answers to Tony at the start of the podcast. Isaiah Land and Will McDonald, 2 guys that were pass rushers in college, right? One's 220, one's 230. What are you hearing from NFL teams? We've seen the transition in linebacker finally, where you see 225-pound linebackers running around. Are we seeing NFL teams get more comfortable using 230-pound guys on the edge more situationally, or do they want to see them in more of that off-ball role?
Yeah, those are 2 guys that we put in as linebackers because of the weight. Right. I mean, Isaiah, for instance, again, we get a lot of traffic coming through Mobile from the Tallahassee guys going from Florida State and Florida A&M over here to South Alabama. So they'll stop by the office. And I mean, Isaiah's weight, people were telling anywhere between 207 and 217 this year. And wow. He had 19 sacks as a junior, and he's got natural movement to his rush game. But you got to get bigger than that. So to me, for Isaiah, it'll be interesting. It's really hard because he knows he has to gain weight, and he's got to do it in a short amount of time. So sometimes when guys do that, it's not great weight. It's not great weight. So it is a big week for Isaiah. Again, Buck Buchanan Award winner as a junior. This year the numbers weren't quite the same. He didn't get that award, but it's going to be interesting. But no, to answer your question, and Will McDonald's in the same category. I mean, 30+ sacks in college in the Big 12. 6'9" high jumper in high school. I mean, the dude's explosive athlete. But the league, they want to play with 255, 260-pound men. You have to hold up against 310-pound tackles in the run game, or you're just a DPR. And that's fine. I mean, there's a role for those guys, but if you really want to get drafted high and be a starting level player, both of those guys are going to have to get bigger. And again, sometimes it's hard for guys. I've heard Will McDonald has a hard time putting on weight. So, to me, it's from a scout's perspective, like, you just want to see them trending in the right direction. So like if scouts went through FAMU in the fall and Isaiah was 217, shows up to Mobile 227, shows up at the combine 235. Now at least you're seeing a steady progression. And then you think you're just projecting out to next August, maybe you got him to 245, and then he might have a chance. And then by his third year, you might have him to 255, 260,
right?
Just with some natural maturation weight. But yeah, both those guys kind of fall in the same category, like undersized, but legitimate rush talent.
One last linebacker I want to talk about, and a player who I feel some of the other guys I mentioned do not get the respect that they deserve, and I think they're going to blow it up in Senior Bowl week. Dorian Williams of Tulane, who's been a terrific linebacker 3 years, 126 tackles last year, 73 as a junior, 98 as a sophomore when he jumped on my board as a draftable prospect, and really showed a complete game this year. I mean, he was good not only against the run, but also showed the ability to make plays in coverage. I think this is going to be a real huge week where people, like you say, maybe earlier, don't watch Tulane. They're going to become very acquainted with Dorian Williams very quickly during Senior Bowl week.
Yeah, you nailed it, Tony. I mean, the coverage piece is what he added this year. And again, he jumped out for us, and it was the COVID year because we were over there scouting Cam Sample, who came to the game and went. And I think Cam had a great week here. I think he went in the 6th round to Cincinnati. But Dorian just stood out that day just with his motor. You saw this undersized backer just flying sideline to sideline, and had to look down at the flip card and be like, "Oh my God, the kid's a sophomore! Like this guy's got a couple more years." And we post the videos throughout the fall when our scouts go to the games during pregame, because I'm really trying to, as you guys know, the body type is such an important overlooked part of an evaluation. I mean, it's really critical to how a guy is built. And Dorian's interesting. He looks like a safety from the waist down, and he looks like a legit linebacker from the waist up. He's a little top heavy in his build, and that's where you see kind of the safety background. This guy can really run. I mean, he's the speed linebacker everyone's looking for. Like you said, he's been around the ball. He's been highly productive, and the coverage stuff got better this year. He's got really nice awareness, developed really nice awareness. So I'm with you. I think he's a guy that's going to turn heads and get on more radars.
All right, let's jump over to the DBs real quick, Jim. We appreciate all the time. I know we're going a little long here. Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, good size guy. Played what I watched yesterday. Plays a lot of off, a lot of cover 3. I think him in the one-on-one drills, I think it'll be fun to see if that athleticism can transfer a little bit.
Yeah, big guy that plays a lot of off. So I want to see what he looks like playing press.
Yeah.
But for a bigger guy, he has a trigger and he's physical. So when he closes on receivers, he can get the ball out when he's playing stuff in front. And so you're right, one-on-ones, it'll be interesting to see from a technique standpoint, like where he's at with his press technique and how comfortable and patient he is, because they're going to be doing a lot of that. And a lot of it's to see those guys, and a lot of it's to see the receivers on how they handle press, because they don't, outside of the SEC, you don't see a lot of teams playing press man. So Tyreek's one of the better big corners in the draft, and there's a little bit of a grade variance on him right now around the league. There's a little bit of a split there. Some teams are, from like that 3rd to 5th range on Tyreek. Sometimes, depending on the prospect, I mean, sometimes it's really, really zeroed in on like a round or two, and other guys there's more of a variance. But Tyreek could have a big week. I really think the press stuff could help him.
You kind of beat me to the punch with this guy earlier. Riley Moss of Iowa, because when you watch the film of Riley Moss, all he's doing is making plays when the ball's in the air. He's getting his head back around in the short field, down the field. Yet people want to stereotype him. I mean, how high do you think Riley Moss can go or improve his draft stock coming out of Senior Bowl week? Because he's been a terrific player for 3 years at Iowa.
Yeah, Riley was the guy we had committed a game last year, and he was the Big Ten DB of the year. Had 4 picks and a couple pick sixes, and give it to the staff at Iowa. They somehow talked the guy into coming back. So, we were talking about this on a Zoom call that we had. Basically, we set up for the ESPN guys and the NFL Network guys last week to go over the whole roster. And I sat on that and talked about every guy for 2.5 hours. They probably all took bathroom breaks and tuned me out after a while. But no, so I was talking about Riley, and I was talking about how there's just lazy narrative out there, how, he's got to be a safety, and it's all because he's white. And a prominent member of the ESPN crew jumped in, and he was like, that's absolute BS. He's like, I did 2 of this guy's games this year. He's one of the most fluid athletes I saw all year live. So like anyone that's doing that stereotyping is just completely off base. So I think Riley right now for most teams is in that 4th round area. But again, I think if you just look at the high school track background, and maybe I do this more maybe because my dad was a high school track coach in addition to being a football coach. So 1385 is rolling in the 110 high hurdle. So I think Riley could run in the 4.3s, and you get a corner that's played that much football and has that much ball production running in the 4.3s. Those guys usually don't get out of day 2.
Let me ask you this about Moss real quick. And I'm going to put you in a spot here. Is he a nickel at the next level, or does he have starting potential?
Yeah, I think he's got starting potential. I would definitely say that. I think he's more of an outside corner. I don't know if he's got that short area quickness to be an elite slot, but I mean, teams use slots differently nowadays too. So if I were projecting him, for a team, I'd write him as an outside corner.
Real quick, a couple safeties here, Jim. Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. Safety, slot guy, like both? I watched on tape, and I mean, his movement skills are tremendous.
Yeah, football player, man. Football player. Fun guy to watch. That's to me, I always tell players, when I was a scout and I'd meet with guys, like, biggest compliment you can give a player is that he's fun to watch on tape. Jamie's urgent. He darts around. He's got that darter quality to him. Like, he'll just knife through the box and light somebody up. He's got a lot of Jalen Petrie comparisons, and I see that. I think there's some of that. I think Jalen last year really helped himself Senior Bowl week because he was mainly like an underneath zone player, blitzer in the Baylor scheme, and that's why he had 17.5 tackles for loss or whatever he had. And then he comes to Senior Bowl, and he is manned against tight ends. He is playing deep from the hash, and you saw the speed because I think Jalen ended up running like 4.46, and that at the combine, I think that speed really showed up. And Jamie's going to be the same way. They're similar guys, but to me, he's a guy that could play nickel. He could play. He's kind of interchangeable at safety. He's got some free. He's got some strong because he will knife down, and he's got toughness and run support. So just a fun guy to watch.
You talk about fun guys to watch, and you talk about Jalen Petrie. Talk about another safety that's going to be at the Senior Bowl, Sidney Brown of Illinois. I mean, this guy plays big boy football. He is willing to he throws his body around the field. He's decent in coverage. He's not a liability in coverage. Covers a lot of area. Good instincts. Really looking forward to seeing him. And it's, again, I mean, I remember Petrie. Petrie was shutting down opponents in one-on-ones last year. If Sidney Brown has that ability, Sidney Brown's going to watch his draft stock take off. Yeah,
no doubt. So Sidney's twin brother Chase is coming down to play running back. Chase got most of the pub this year, as he should. You're right, but Sidney was overlooked, and he's back there with Witherspoon and Quan Martin, and unbelievable secondary they had this year. But I'll admit it, like, when I started watching Sidney over the summer, like I saw a strong safety, kind of more of a box guy, that you'd be really fired up about drafting, and he's going to be a really good core teams player because of his play style, really aggressive and physical. And then we get to the second half of this year, and he just starts turning the ball over. I think he ended up with 7 interceptions this year. So I mean, that's an insane number for a college player. You don't see many college guys get 7 picks in 1 year. So yeah, he's had a great year. I think Sidney's he's doing this, and I just love when I watch tape of guys like Sidney. I always think about what it's going to look like on our practice field, and just the energy level and the competitiveness, and having other guys feed off that. Like, you need some of those guys down here. We need some of those guys, and so it'll be good having Sidney out there because I know he's going to bring juice.
That's Jim Nagy joining us on Draft Season, brought to you by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand, an official partner of the New York Football Giants. He's the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl. We'll be out there next week. We can't wait to see you, Jim. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. And you got a lot going on. Get back to work, and we'll see you next week. All right?
All right, John. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you guys having me back on.
All right, we'll see you next time on Draft Season.